And thanks, folks, for joining us. My name is Derek Martin. I am the Senior Manager of our Solution Architect team at Blackbaud, and I am delighted to welcome you to this session around creating an automated thank you letter for donations. And our presenter today is Ben Haynes from Encodian. So Ben, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera and mic and get out of your way and let you present.
Thank you for that introduction. I'm going to be showing you today about how we can create an automated thank you letter for donations from your Raiser's Edge data. If I've got any problems with audio, please let me know as we go through. I'm also going to be showing a number of Power Automates, and as I show those, some of them can be quite minute. So please say if they're not big enough on your screen, and I can increase the size so that we can see all the boxes together. I don't want to leave you behind as we're going through it. So if that happens at any stage, just give us a shout and we'll go from there. Okay, so my name's Ben Haynes. I'm Power Platform Practice Lead in Encodian, and I deal with all things that Microsoft produce with the word power in them. So that's Power Automate, Power Virtual Agents, Power Pages, Power Apps, all of those, apart from joke I always use, PowerPoint, which is very salient when you see the slides as we go through today. If you have any questions, please ask them in the chat and I can pick them all up at the end. I'll go through any of that there and we'll answer them, and I'll answer them at the end. So what we're going to go away and build today? Well, what we're looking at building today is an automated system that looks at your gifts that have come in over the previous 24 hours and, if appropriate, sends those people a thank you letter. Now, we're talking an old school letter that we're able to print out and send. However, we could modify this to use it so that we could send it via email if we wanted. Why am I doing it as an old school letter? Because it allows me to show you how we can look up addresses and things so that we can see whether someone's got an address. And it gives me some conditions to add into the flow to show you how you could add conditions in there. It's worth me pointing out that everything here that you will see, the solution itself is available as part of this session, and the slides are there as well. So, what elements are we going to use to build this solution today? Well, we're going to use Raiser's Edge, of course, where all our data is. We're going to use OneDrive to store our files, including our template file that we're going to use for our thank you letter. We're going to use Flower, which is an Encodian action that we're going to have inside of our Power Automate, and I will explain that as we go through. And we're also going to use Power Automate itself, which is Microsoft's glue workflow engine that's we're going to use to look at everything that's happened and send those documents accordingly. So we know what elements, technological elements, we're going to use, but what concepts are we going to use? Well, we're going to use these 4 key concepts here. The first one is the principle of child flows. Now, what this allows you to do is encapsulate your data and the way in which your flow runs in a flow, which is a workflow inside of Power Automate that can be called by another flow. And that can be really useful for a whole host of things. It means, for example, if you sent an email a lot, you could put that inside of a child flow, and then it could be called by other flows and always send the same email. We're also going to be looking at related data. And this is the way in which Raiser's Edge has data associated with one record, but it's got interlocking data to that. So let's take the example of a constituent. When we go and get the gift, the person who gave the gift would be a constituent, and we need to be able to go and get information about them to do with their address and so on. So I'll be talking through how we do that. I'll also be going through how we add a document, so how we actually add a document against our gift record. And then lastly, how we populate that document with data from Raiser's Edge so that the document is there, the letter is there, ready to send out. So what are the steps that we're going to do? Well, firstly, we're going to go and create a list against our GIFs so that we can use that to get back our data. Then we're going to generate the letter itself. So when I mean generate, this is us building the letter, actually going in and saying what we want to say. Then we're going to go and gather the GIFs themselves. Then we're going to go and populate those letters. And then we're going to go and add them into Raiser's Edge ready to be used. So there's our steps. Let's start with the first one, which will be building a GIFs list. So I'm inside my Raiser's Edge here, and I've gone in and I've selected GIFs. And in here, I can go and produce as many lists as I would like based on the filters that I put in. Now, I'm interested in only looking at any GIFs or pledges that have come in the last 24 hours to respond to. Now, I've said in here that these are my particular GIF types. So I've set these as the GIFs type. So it's only these types of GIFs that I'm going to send letters for at the moment. So I'm already doing some of my filtering before I go anywhere near Power Automate. Why am I doing that? I'm doing that because when the Power Automate runs and calls this list, it is this data filtered like this that comes back. So we will expect it to bring back, in this instance, 4 items. If I went and changed it over here to say in a different range, I would get another set of items back, and they would be the ones that come back to me. If I was looking at doing it just for yesterday, I can click that there, click apply, and I would see these 2 items come through. Now what I'm going to go and do is just set it back again, because I want to know that I have a number of gates, if you like, in order to be able to generate that letter. And I know that in this given specific range, one of those fulfills that criteria. So I'm just going to go and set this back so that I'm pulling them back between the 29th and the 30th of May. And my items have come back as before. If I go and open this one here, here's the record for the gift itself. And we can see all of the information about it. What I've done there is clicked on the person. I actually want to click on the GIF. I've done that many times. Wondered why I was confused. So I open up this here, and when I pull down, you'll see I have a letter. And when I click on that letter, here is a letter to Sandeep, all worked out with his address and all of this information. And this is what we're going to go and build now. So we can see it's already run. This will have run overnight and produced that letter. It's ready for me to send out. Okay. So we've now completed our first step. We've built our list. We've used Blackboard and the Raised Edge to do it, and we created our gifts and pledge list. What are we going to go and do next? We're going to go and generate our document that we will be using to put our template in. So that's the template that we're going to then go and populate. So in here, inside here, I have my thank you template. Now you'll notice I'm running this in Word in the web. The reason I'm doing that is because this template is stored in my OneDrive. I have a location here, which I have called Blackboard Files. And in there is my thank you letter template, and you can see. So I know where it's stored and I can edit it in there. When I open this up, here's the letter that you saw earlier, and there are some motifs and headers and things in there. The reason they're not showing is because I'm inside of the web. If I was to open it in the Word, I would see those motifs at the side there. The bits that I would draw your attention to at this point is the areas here which have these what are called tags in them. And this is what the encodianflower, which is an action that we have, which you can use to populate your letters. And it is these tags where it knows, and I will show you how it knows as we go through, what to put into the right places. So here we're going to put in the constituent's full name. Here we're going to put in the constituent's address, and then we're going to go and put in their first name. All of this data we will get back. When we look further down, what we can also see here is the campaign ID. Now, what we're doing here is we're using an if case. So if we know that this person has donated according to a specific campaign that we've had, we can change the text of our letter. So we're saying here that if the campaign equals this ID, we want to say, it's thank you for your contribution. It will make a significant impact on the construction of new schools. If it's not for that campaign, we're going to say the education of children. And we can do that with lots of different else's and build it up so that we can give them the right information to the person we're sending our letter to. We can also create repeating tables and all sorts of things, but at the moment we're just doing these simple things to create the letter. So now we have our letter and our letter is saved. So what we've done is we've gone and created our letter in Word, we've used tags, and we've done templating. Flower is what we're going to use later inside of our flow to populate those tags. So our next stage is to now go and gather the gifts from the last designated time period. So we're going to look at these concepts in this. Scheduling, so we're going to run a flow on a given schedule. Then we're going to go and look at related data. So that is how we're going to go and get the other data associated with our record that's come back from our gifts list. And then we're going to go and look at conditions. So we're going to look at what conditions do we want to have in order to generate that letter. So I have a Power Automate over here. Get there in the end, this one. We go and look at this, and hopefully everyone can see this okay when it loads up. Please shout if you can't. So what we've got up here is what's called our trigger. And in Power Automate, the trigger is the thing that we are looking for to make our flow run. And ours is quite simple. We're just doing it on a reoccurrence. So we're scheduling it, if you like. And we're saying to it, I want it to run the flow every day at 9 AM. So it's going to go away and it's going to run it every day at 9 AM and it will run through. When I came to check everything this morning to make sure it was all working, I did this last week and I had quite a few letters because it'd been running every day. So if you build it and you don't want it to run, you can turn it off. So first of all, we're just going to go and work out, okay, it runs every day. Now, the next thing we're going to go and do is get our lists. So what we're looking at here is an action, and this is an action that's supplied by Blackboard that goes and gets our gifts for us. How we find these is we click on here and we say add an action, and then we want to go and search on Blackboard, and back they come. And these are all of the actions that are available to us for talking to the Raiser's Edge for the things that we need. Here's the gift one. You can see the little gift icon, and if I click on there, these are all the actions I can do. One of which is to call a list. So that's exactly what I've done in here. I go and call our list, which we know is called Today's Gifts and Pledges. If I switch back over to here, there's the name of our list. Then what I'm going and doing is I'm just saying that the limit is 5,000, just so we've got something to work through. And then I'm going and setting up a couple of variables. Variables are just things that the flow can remember as it goes through, so it can use that particular item in different sections. And I'm doing one for acknowledged, and I'm doing one for the campaign ID. That's because I want to store whether the gift has been acknowledged or not, and I also want to store the campaign ID. The acknowledged I want to store because I need to determine whether, if it's been acknowledged, I don't want to send another letter. And campaign ID because I'm using the campaign ID in the if area of my document template in here to determine what I'm going to display. So we've gone and got all of our gifts. Now this applied to each loop here is something that you can have in Power Automate. And what it does is it loops through a collection. So when we go and get all of our lists, we're expecting to get 4 items back. So this will loop through each item that we see. So it will loop through this one, then this one, then this one, and then this one. Although we'll get 4, it is important to note they may not come back in the order that they specify here. We could get them back in any order. So when you're designing your flow, it's always important to remember that. You can't guarantee that they'll come back in the order that you see them there. So we're now going through, we get our value, which is basically our item. The next thing we need to be able to go and do is start to get some relational data. We have the information about our gift, and we have our constituent ID, the ID that is associated with our constituent in the underlying database. We want to get that so that we can go and start to get all of the information about that constituent. So you can see here, I pick that up and I throw it into here, and that will now bring back lots of information about that constituent. All I'm doing then is blanking my variables that are set up here. Why am I blanking them or setting them to default? Because I'm in a loop. So the next one that goes round, these need to be set back to their default in order to allow me to check them again. I don't want the information that went through on the last cycle to come into this cycle and cause me a problem. So I'm just blanking them. Now, when I get further down into what comes back from my set of lists up here, when that comes back, it's actually got a number of other collections inside of it. One of which is a gifts, and that specifies all of the types of gifts and the campaigns associated with them. So in essence, I've got a collection inside of my collection. So I've got a collection of my lists of all the items that have come back from the list, each gift. And then inside of there, I've got another collection of the gifts themselves. And that's what I'm doing in here. So I'm now getting those for that gift that I'm in the loop of. And I'm going through and I'm just seeing whether I have a campaign ID on any of them. If I do, I'm then calling another piece of relational data, and I'm going and calling the campaign area to pass that campaign ID in to get that campaign record, and then I can go and get its lookup in here. And I know then what the value of the lookup ID is that I can then go and check. Here is something important to remember when you're dealing with this particular area. When you see the IDs and it says campaign ID here, that is the ID inside of the campaign table associated with the record. That sounds obvious, but it is not, most importantly, the lookup ID. That is stored on the same row. And it is different. And if you're going to use a lookup ID to find something, you need to get the row first. Now that all sounds quite confusing, so let me see if I can explain it. What I mean is, when we see this constituent ID here, 6402, when my Power Automate flow runs, and I'm passing in the constituent ID here, I am not passing in the 640D. I am passing in the ID that is associated with the record underneath, and then once I get that, the ID will be there. It's something to be aware of so that it doesn't trip you up when you're thinking, I've got that ID, you may not have the right one. So it's just something to be aware of. So I'm going and doing that, and then I'm repeating the same behavior to get the acknowledged. The acknowledged is part of a collection within our item as well, and I can go in there. I'm just checking to see at any point, is it equal to the word acknowledged, and if so, I'm saying I found an acknowledgement. So now we've got all of the information we need to be able to go and start thinking about generating our thank you letter. So our next condition is probably the most important. And this is the one where we're using this condition to determine whether for this particular gift instance, we should be sending our letter. So the first thing we're doing is checking to see whether the person wants their preferred address to be mailed. If that's not equal to true, so we're saying they don't, that's going to pass. We're then looking to see whether that address is active or not. We're then looking to make sure that it's not been acknowledged, because if it has, we don't want to send it. And the next thing we're doing, sorry, is we're checking to see that we have an address, because if we don't have an address, we've got no one to send it to. Then we're checking to see whether it is being given anonymously as a gift. If it has, we don't want to be able to send them a letter, and also whether they would like always to be anonymous, in which case we wouldn't send them a letter either. So we're just going through each of these different conditions, and you can add your own. So if there are other things that determine whether you send a letter or not, you could go and add those in there if the data comes back to you from the constituent or the campaign, or any of the other information that you want. So this is the one that's driving it. Then once we've done that, we've said now, right, this person should be sent a thank you letter. We'll go down and we'll go and start building up our letter itself. So the next thing we're going to go and do, as you can see here, is our compose JSON for a document. Now, what this is the piece of JSON that's used by our flower action that we will see in a minute to go and populate our document. Now, if you see here, it says constituent full name, that aligns to constituent full name here. And again, if we went and looked at constituent address, that lines up inside of here as constituent address. So that's how it's building that up and knowing what to put into the letter. So the next thing we're now going to go and do is run our child flow. Now, I blithely say run a child flow. What is it, and how do we know we can create one? Well, I explained what one is earlier, but it's what it is in principle is it is another flow that we can call from our flow to go away and do something for us, so it's repeatable. So if we wanted to write another flow, so we were writing letters for a different reason, we could still use this flow and pass it in, so we don't have to write it all again. Now, what's important with child flows is you can only use them if they're inside something called a solution. A solution is a package that puts all of your objects together for a given solution, as in a solution that you're providing. It packages them all together, and then it allows those to run. So we can go and look in our objects in here, and we can see all of our cloud flows and some connection references. That's to do with how you hook it up. But importantly, we can see all of our cloud flows. If you create a flow inside of here that's based on a trigger button, so what triggers it is a button that can act as a child flow, and that is what we're doing here. I have provided all of this solution. It is packaged up and it is available as part of the session. So if you go and see the session details in the agenda, you're able to download this, and of course you can change it and do what you like with it, but it's available. So what I've done as we've gone through is made sure that I've annotated in here where required, so you can see what it's doing and what you do and change it as you so wish. So we're now going to go and call our child flow. So we've now done this part, we've scheduled it, we've got our related data, and we've been through the conditions. So now we actually want to go and populate that letter. So what we're going to do this time is a child flow, we know that. We're going to go and use our OneDrive, because that's where our template is, and we're going to go and populate a document based on it. And these are what we're going to use. We're going to use the flower action, we're going to use OneDrive for content, and we're going to go and use our generate thank you letter child flow. So we pop back over into here, and actually you'll see the one we're calling is save document to Razor's Edge. Now that is this one here. We save document to Razor's Edge. There's our manually trigger a flow, which allows us to use it as a child flow. And what we are expecting is the gift ID here, the ID of the gift item, so that if we need it, the name of the person who gave the gift, and the document data that we created in the former flow, which was our selection of data to be able to populate. Then all we're doing is we're going in and we're looking in here to see and build our document name up. Then we're just checking for errors, that's fine. Then we are now going away and running our child flow, which actually generates the letter. So we click over into here, and we're now in another flow generate thank you letter, we manually trigger our flow again. What's our name? What's our document data? The next thing we need to do is go and get our thank you letter template that we are going to fill. So in here, we're using a OneDrive action called get file content using path. And all that means is it goes and picks up the contents to the file path that we've put in. Now you'll notice inside this file path, we've got a gray and an at. What is that? That is because we're using an environment variable. And this is something, again, that's part of using solutions. If we go back over into our solution and we click on environment variables, we'll see our thank you letter template there. And when we click on it, we're able to go and default value, and we put a new value when we move it to another environment. And inside of there, we can go and say where our letter is stored. So that means we can go and deploy this anywhere, open this up, change that, and our flow will work. Environment variables can be very, very useful and are worth using. So that's exactly what we're doing there. We're going away and we're saying, right, at the default of our area, we want you to go and use go to Blackboard attachments and then go and get the thank you template. So I'm just going to cancel that because as you probably saw, I moved it around with my mouse and made a mess of it. And I want to make sure it works. So I'm just going to go and click it again and check it's okay. Great. So we've got our template, we've got everything we need to go. So we've now gone and got it. Now what we do is we call the Encodian flower. And this is a set of actions that exist. If we go and it's similar to the Blackboard, if I just go and type in like that, it'll come back. And it has all of these actions that we can do with it. So we can do a lot more than what we're doing. We can add page numbers, convert, all sorts of things. But what we're doing at the moment is using it to populate our document. So we open up that, and what we do is we pass it in the content that we've got via the path in the previous step. We then go and give it the document data. So that's our slug of JSON, if we remember from the last one. And it will now go through and create us a version of the document with those items filled in. We take what comes back and we go and produce ourselves our new Word document, which we pop into here with the file content. The reason that we're doing this create file is because we want the location that we're going to pass back to our other flow so that we can start uploading it into Razor's Edge. So that's what we're doing here. And then when we respond, because a child flow can respond by putting out the information that it's produced, whatever you want to put out, we're just simply sending out the Word file name and the location of the document. Also, by separating these out into separate flows, so we've got child flow 1 and we've got child flow 2, when something goes wrong, we can isolate it down. So rather than, I could pull all this in one big flow, but if it fails, every part of the system fails. Whereas doing this, we can isolate, and there's an error handling that I've put into it to allow it to bobble up errors so that we can see them in the higher one. And we can make sure that everything is okay, because we want to know where our error happens when we're doing this. So we've generated our thank you letter. Now what we're going to go and do is build that and add it into the Razor's Edge. So what concepts are we using this time? Well, we're going to go and use child flows again. But this time we're also going to go and use HTTP calls. These are the calls that we're going to use because we need to send the bytes of our document over to the Razor's Edge database. So that's what we're doing. We're also going to go and create a document location in Razor's Edge that we can go and add our document to. And then finally, we're going to associate the document in that document location to our gift. So that's what we've still got to do. So we go back over into here and we have our thank you letter. This is where, if you see here, we have something in flow here that's called a parallel branch. And what it allows me to do is say, if something failed or something passed, go this way or that way. So what I mean by that is, in this variable here, I'm saying I'm unable to generate the letter. But what I've done is configured my run after that this one runs if this particular action fails. So if it fails, or if it's timed out, it's going to go down that tree. If it's okay, we're okay to go and upload it. And it's something that's very useful to do throughout your flows, so that you make sure you don't have that horrible thing where everything's red every time. If you're catching those errors, you can go and look at and see in a much clearer way why it failed. So we're doing that, and we're hoping it's going to pass. So when we go and look at this configure run after, we're saying, if that's been successful, down this path, please. So first thing we're going to go and do is get a file thumbnail that we can use. So we're going to use the file locator that came from our generated document, and we're just going to go and get all that information. And then we're going to use a HTTP request from the URL that's returned for our thumbnail, and we're going to go and get all the bytes that we need for that. Now, I understand that this bit here, and also we go and do exactly the same thing again for uploading our document, and we're using lots of arrays here and building these up. This is to allow us to go and upload our document into Razor's Edge. This comes from the template that's provided by Blackboard that you can get if you go into Flow and you search for a document with Blackboard. This Flow will come back, and these items are already done for you. I've gone through and I have added into here, I've annotated them so you know what they're doing, but in essence, it's building it all up and transferring it across. Before we do that, I'm just going to skip back up into here and see our create a document location. So what we're doing here is creating a location within Razor's Edge to store our document. So the file name is our output all the way back up here of what our document name was. So we put that in there. We're saying we're including the thumbnail. Yes, we are. And what it's now gone and done is provision us to place to put that document. We still have to put that document there, which is why when we come down into here, what we're actually doing is getting the file upload. So where we're going to put it, our header, which is the headers we've built up here for our HTTP request, and the body of our document. And then it will transfer it over and it's ready to go. But it's still not finished, because while it's in Razor's Edge, it's not attached to our gift. So how do we do that? Well, what we do now is we go and create another action called create a gift attachment. We use the gift ID that we've got when we're circulating through. We go and tell it it's a physical file. Tell it, say this is thank you letter for this gift ID, so we can see it. Our output, which is the name, file name again, where the file ID is, and the thumb ID. So we're just setting it up and the location. And again, we're capturing to make sure whether the whole of this scope passes or fails. And then if it does, it responds to that flow, and back we go into our main flow, which is this one here. So we've built it, it's ready to go. Let's see it. So if I go to test, I can run a manual test from here, and I'll run my flow, and off it goes. And now we can begin, we'll be able to see in a moment how all those different areas are working. So the first one we want to look at is our lift gifts here, and we can see we've got a count of 4. Well, that seems right, because that's how many we've got in here. We are then looking at our collections that come back. So here's our first ID, and here's our collection for acknowledgements. We can then see our value. There's our constituent ID. As you can see, if we look at this here, we're looking at the different and how it was paid and everything like that, and we can see all of that information. And there's quite a lot of information associated with it, and we can see all the different things. You will also see that this constituent ID here, 625997, nowhere appears here. And that's what I was talking about, that we actually need to go and get the lookup from the record for it to be that one. So that's now run away, and we can see that everything's finished. So if we go back over into here and we look at Sandy, we will see, and again, press the wrong one. What we will see is our new letter come in, and there it is. There's the letter we've just created. If I open that up, we'll see the same as we did before. There's our logo. Everything's been taken from for Sandeep and brought across. So if we go back now and just have a look at our Power Automate again, we can look at our apply to each, and then it'll begin to make some sense. So first of all, we'll go and get our constituent. So this time it's Mr. Ignabar. Now, this goes down and we can see all that information and all the constituents' information about him, but we didn't get a thank you letter for him. Why? Well, he didn't satisfy the particular expressions that we needed to be able to send him a thank you letter. So we can go and investigate why. We open that up, and what we'll be able to see on the right-hand side here is all our information about him. So here's the constituent information for him, and he hasn't got any addresses. So he doesn't have a physical address for us to be able to send it to, therefore he doesn't get it. Equally, it's been acknowledged, so he doesn't get one either. Whereas if we were to go and look at Sandeep, we will see he does have some addresses. He's got a work address, which is the one it's used, because the home address has been told for it not to mail. So we know that's the right address. And if we go and look at that thank you letter, we will see that's the address it's created. So it's gone through and it's done that. So if we go back into here and we go and look and we just click through until we find Sandy, and you see it's not come back in the right order. So here he is. If we go down to here, we'll see that in fact he passed everything to send a thank you letter. We've then created the JSON, so there's the information that we know that we need. And then we go and run it, and off it goes. We pass in the data across, goes and populates our document, and we get our outputs. So what we've done there is we've gone from end to end, and if we ran that and we put it on a scheduled flow, it would go and send everything for everybody from yesterday. Things to know. The lookup ID value, this is one I said about, it's not the same as a database item ID, can trip you up. It's worth looking and making sure that you get that ID as opposed to that sometimes when you're referencing and looking for things. So if you're looking for a particular constituent. The file name for the Razor Edge can't be over 36 characters. So just be careful, don't put very long titles in with dates, it won't accept it. And the result that you get out is only as good as your data. Now, I know that sounds obvious, but it's one of those things where you may suddenly think, well, why is it not generating any letters? It's worth saying, okay, has the constituent got an address? Have we got them wrongly set to be anonymous? Have we actually got them correctly set to be anonymous? So it's worth checking your data, because what comes out in those letters will only ever be as good. When I spoke about this before, somebody asked a question about whether we could do something to ensure those letters are correct before we go out. And yes, yes, you could do. What you could do is put them and leave them in the OneDrive for someone to look at them, and then they could run another flow that allowed it to then go and move it onto the item once it was approved. Or, as someone pointed out, it's a very good idea, you could use the approvals that's already built into Power Automate. When it generates the document, it emails someone to say, there's a new document for you to go and look at. Can you review this and see if you approve it? When it approves it, the rest of the flow will run and it'll go and attach it. So we can put that sort of approval in there. Which brings me on to, what could we do next with this? Well, the most obvious thing is to go and set the acknowledgement status. So we've sent it now, we've done it. If we could actually go and say, right, the letter's done, let's stamp the acknowledgement status. And that's a simple call, again, using the calls that are there, using the Blackboard connector to go and say, let's change the acknowledgement status for this gift to say it's right. We could go and choose different letter templates based on our donation. So when we go and pass it over, if we know what campaign we're looking at, we could say, right, well, this is the type of letter we want to generate for that. So that's another thing that we could do. We could use a nice big switch case inside one of our flows. The other thing we could go and do is create a PDF version of that letter. So we might not want to send them a Word document, they'll be manipulated, create the Word document, use the Encodian convert to PDF, convert that to PDF, and then go and store that version around it. And equally, we could go and email the constituent to the letter as well. So last thing, just saying, I know it's complicated, so we can help you. So we can go through and do all these different things to make it better. And of course, I'll end up by saying any questions. I know I've been through a lot of detail and it's complicated, so please ask.
Ben, that was very detailed. And for a topic like this, maybe the question is, what questions do you have instead of any questions? I do see in the chat, someone, Mark asked about gift date is not always the same as gift added, or the date that the gift was added to the system. Someone else, Alex, weighed in to say that our ENXT gift list does not allow to filter on date added, but you can use Sky API to get to that.
Okay.
Also, as a workaround, you could set the date that the gift was added to the system as the post date if you're not otherwise using that field. But I'm curious, what's your guidance there?
I would say you want to look at the list itself, determine the fields that are in there, and make sure that you can't do it absolutely using any of those filters. And there may be that you could do it for a campaign or change the way that you want to set up that list, because you're then taking it's not as arduous as you then, you're letting the data inside the Razor's Edge do the hard work for you, get the data you want it to be shaped inside of those lists, and then return it. As far as actually looking at the day before and using the Sky API, I'm not overly familiar with that. I just have to have a look and determine the best way to do that.
Okay.
Can you request approval? Yes, you could do that. So you could, by all means, sorry, the question is, can you request approval from the assigned solicitor on each gift letter? Yeah, that's possible. If you can get that data, you could then go and use it inside of the flow to say where it goes, or you could create a list somewhere else that it can look up and do that information. The thing I would say about that, if you do want to do that, always use those environment variables, because people move, they move out of jobs, they move all over the place. So you want to be able to make sure that they're updated, so that when, or even if when someone goes on holiday, there's still someone there to be able to approve that letter. So I'd make sure that you're using dynamic variables to do that rather than hard coding anyone's name. The moment you hard code a name into Flow, stop, think, should I be doing this? If you're filtering,
Vanessa makes the point. Yeah, I was just gonna say, she makes the point that if you're updating the status of gifts to acknowledged after you acknowledge them, then gift date becomes less important, right? You can just filter by gift status.
Yeah, you could not. I could really actually do that stage and say any that acknowledged I don't want in my list, and that again, that comes back to making sure your list is correct before I go any further. So if I knock those out, I wouldn't see them anyway. But I wanted to be able to put them in there so I could show you how you can do different filtering. But yes, again, get your list right. Okay. If the data is not as clean, can the exception handling get too much? Yes, it might be best to filter it. You could definitely use HTML templates. So sorry, I'm just looking at the question. We can generate HTML template. Yeah, all of that's open to you. So I would say that what you're looking at the moment is just a starter kit that takes them letters, generates them. You don't need to use the sort of the Encodian action. There is a word action that you could use, but it is a premium action inside Flow. But you can use that. You could use your own HTML template. You could use there is a thing inside of OneDrive and one of the actions that allows it to take a bunch of HTML and turn it into a PDF, as you quite rightly say. So you could do that. It's a lot of work. Got to know your HTML, got to know your style sheets, but it's all possible. The mechanisms, the most important mechanisms are gathering it, making sure that you gather it correctly, and then going away and making sure that you create the location and stream the document over. And those are the hardest bits to get, and they're all within that template. And to be fair, they are in the Blackboard template as well, that you can just go into Power Automate and type in now, and it'll come back for you with all of the HTTP calls and everything done for you.
We missed a question from Catherine as well. Does campaign have to be the condition? Can we use another field like letter code?
Yes, if you can get the field back And what you'd need to do, and this is how I've done this, is when I showed you that JSON, that horrible bit of JSON at the beginning, well, after it had run, and we said, here's the lists, and here's all the gift items. Inside of there, you can go and have a look at that in a JSON viewer if you want to, just cut it out, even look at it in Notepad, and you'll be able to see all the fields in there that you can start working on. And if it's not there, see whether it's associated with one of the underlying other areas, like the constituent, like the campaign, and go and get that information from there. So if you can get it, you can use it.
Great. I think we've gotten all the questions in the chat, and we are at time. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.